Hi, this is Rachel, founder and presenter of the Multidimensional show. Dave Hodrien has been chair of Birmingham UFO Group, BUFOG, since 2009 and regularly investigates UFO reports. In this interview, Dave shares his journey to becoming involved in the ufology scene and some of the fascinating cases he's investigated over the years, including one shared high strange experience of his own. Dave orchestrates the group activities, which include monthly talks by guest speakers, sky watchers and field trips. Since becoming lead investigator for BUFOG, he has also personally investigated hundreds of UFO sightings and contact experiences, near and far. Do you just want to tell listeners about yourself then, Dave?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Well, my name's Dave Hodrien. I'm the chairman and lead investigator for Birmingham UFO Group. We've been running the group since late 2007, and I soon became the official investigator for the group due to my interest in the subject and good background knowledge of it, which I can go into in a moment. Middle of 2009, I also took over the running of Birmingham UFO Group. The original chairman, Craig and Mark, for them it was a kind of short-term thing, and they wanted somebody responsible to essentially keep the group going, and they thought I was the best person for the job. And here we are in 2019, and it's still alive and kicking, so I guess they chose wisely. In terms of my background in the subject, I've really been interested in the paranormal since an early age, not just the whole UFO thing, just more wide scale. As with a lot of people, I've got a general interest in lots of areas of the paranormal, ghosts, psychic phenomena, Bigfoot, etc. It's always been fascinating to me, the kind of fringe areas that are not fully explained by science. And I think we live in such a kind of varied world. I think that there's a lot out there that's yet to be fully explained. And I think that areas of the paranormal point towards that. We're seeing experiences of people of things that have not been fully accepted by the scientific community as proven fact yet, which of course depends on how you decide what your level of evidence is. For me, I would say that for both UFOs and ghosts, for example, I would say there's an absolute mass of evidence for both those areas pointing towards its reality. And also, I'd say probably psychic phenomena as well. Absolutely incredible amounts of information and numbers of cases out there. But I've got a particular interest in the UFO field. It's just always fascinated me to think that we may not be the only people in this vast universe, intelligent species. And I believe what's going on with it. I think at the end of the day, I do believe that they are extraterrestrial in origin. I think that we are being visited by numerous life forms, different types. And I just think that they found us before we found them. I think that's what's going on. I believe that they are more highly evolved than us, and that you see that through their abilities and through the maneuvering capabilities of their craft. And I think that points towards them being a more sort of technological level. And I believe that they've found a way of reaching Earth via whatever means, whether it's travel through space or travel through dimensional gateways or however they're getting. I don't pretend to have all the answers to what's going on with this subject at all. But I just look at the evidence from the cases that are on record. It's case after case on record. And I think that the evidence is absolutely fascinating and I think extremely compelling. That's really how my interest in the UFO thing began. I started off just reading sort of books on the paranormal, but from age 16 I started visiting conferences, UFO conferences, and I live in Solihull, south of Birmingham, and there happened to be a big conference running once a year for UFO magazine, which was the biggest worldwide UFO-related publication at the time, run by the late Graham Birdsall. Absolute legend in the UFO field. And they did their yearly conference in Solihull, which is just down the road from me, so it's absolutely brilliant. So obviously back then I wasn't driving or anything, but I could take a bus in, and we started going to conferences and seeing speakers talk about cases that investigated, and speaking about witnesses that they'd spoken with directly, so passing on information. And it was absolutely fascinating to me. And I wondered what it'd be like to be on the front lines of the subject, to be hearing these stories off people and putting it out to the wider public. So I suppose it's always been a calling for me in a way. And it was Birmingham UFO Group that really gave me that outlet to proceed with that to a sort of more direct level. Up until that point, I just had a big interest in the subject. I was watching documentaries, reading the magazines regularly, etc. And I could have got actively involved in the UFO subject before that, in an early age, certainly. But I think it was just the locality of Birmingham UFO Group, the fact that there was somewhere I could go to and meet like-minded people and just have a good old natter about the subject. And me and my brother were two of the first members to sign up with the group. And it kind of went from there, and it was soon after that I got taken on as the lead investigator for the group, at which point I was directly investigating cases that were coming in via phone and email to the group.
Wow. So how much time does it take out of your week then doing these investigations? Because you must be on the go all the time. You've literally covered hundreds of cases, haven't you?
Yeah. I have, yeah. Over the years, I'd say at least I haven't counted it up, to be fair. I could at some point go back and check. If you were counting on a case-by-case basis, at least 1,000 UFO sightings and over 250, between 250 and 300 contact-related cases. Now, with contact cases, obviously, those cases have often got numerous UFO sightings in them and other experiences. And by contact, I mean direct interaction with the beings that are seen, as well as just sort of seeing craft or objects up in the sky. And of course, the majority of sightings that are seen are just misidentification of mundane things. Yeah, I try to remain quite grounded with the subject. Maybe some people find me a bit too grounded in a way. I'm not easily convinced. I'll quite happily tell somebody where what they're seeing isn't a genuine UFO. You know, where it's a Chinese lantern or a balloon or a helicopter at a distance. There are loads of different things, and that can appear in different conditions to look very, very strange indeed. But you get used to that if you're dealing with case by case. You see the same things crop up time and time again. I've had numerous cases, for example, where it's been the International Space Station. I've had numerous cases where it's been a solar airship. Not many people even know what a solar airship is, let alone what it looks like. And they can look quite dramatic. So there's lots of different explanations for what's going on with the subject. But I find it truly fascinating. In terms of how much time and effort it takes, it's very, very varied. If I'm working on a big case, that can sometimes involve hours and hours of speaking with the individual. Some of the bigger contact cases, I have spoken with the individuals for up to 50 hours. That's involved numerous direct visits to them. Sometimes they live on the other side of the UK. I'm happy to travel when it's a very sort of dramatic, big case. A lot of the time, I just speak with people via phone or email or Skype. Of course, we're talking right now on Zoom, and it's exactly the same as talking face to face, really. However, going out and speaking directly with people is brilliant because you can kind of go and visit the locations where things have happened, take photographs, etc. So it's got that sort of additional level to it. I can ask people to draw drawings of what they're discussing right there and then, and they'll just draw them for me, and I'll take those away, and they'll form part of the report. In a lot of cases, you don't get any photographic or video evidence. There's a lot of reasons why that's the case. A lot of people think in this day and age, well, the smartphones, everybody's got a video camera in their pocket. Why aren't we seeing hundreds of close-up videos of UFOs and aliens coming out? It's not like that. It's genuinely not. And I've spoken with people time and time again, and I'll always ask them, why is there no video footage? Did you have a camera on you? You get the same answers again and again, and these are genuine answers that come out of people. That's the reason why they didn't get the video. I don't want to get sidetracked because that's one element. We can discuss that in more depth if you wish. At the moment, we're talking about how long things take, aren't we? See, I tend to jump around between different things as you pick up different things in conversation.
That's fine.
There is a perfectly valid explanation for why that's the case. So, in the absence of video and photographic proof, the next best thing is a witness drawing, because they can describe all they like about the type of object they've seen or the type of being they've seen, had experiences with. But it's better if they draw that down because they know exactly how it looked to them. And sometimes that can be, you know, just a really quick sketch, really basic, and they'll be embarrassed about their lack of artistic skills or whatever. And sometimes it can be really detailed. I've had some witnesses I've spoken with who happen to have been artists, and they've drawn really fantastically detailed sketches or even paintings of the things that they've seen. And while I deal with a lot of cases where it can be explained away as mundane, I've also dealt with a hell of a lot of cases where it's quite obviously an advanced structured craft of some kind that's performing incredible maneuvering capabilities or interacting with the environment in a way that a normal man-made aircraft just wouldn't do. I think, you know, there are things out there right now flying around that are far in advance of anything that our military have got, or that America's military have got, or ever. You know, because these things are from outside. As I said earlier in our chat, I don't pretend to know 100% that they're extraterrestrial. I look at the evidence from what I gather from the contact experiences I've dealt with, as well as the straight-up UFO sightings. And my personal opinion at present, and I'm happy to change my opinion tomorrow if something comes along that shifts that view. My personal opinion is that they're extraterrestrial, but possess very advanced capabilities, such as the ability to move between different dimensions. There's a lot of very unusual elements of contact. You don't often see it with straight-up UFO sightings, although sometimes some of these odd elements can happen with just a straight-up UFO sighting. But when there's beings involved, or where people are having abduction experiences, there's all sorts of very unusual elements, time distortion, or people not acting as they would normally act, or acting in a kind of different frame of mind. I believe that some of these things are done on purpose because what's happening is happening covertly, which is why they haven't landed on the White House lawn yet, because they don't want. I think it's an ongoing thing that it's been going on for a long time. I believe I'm not getting any signs of it coming to a close, not from the information I'm getting off people I speak with. And I think that we're catching a glimpse of an ongoing program of some kind with numerous different agendas that involve the whole of the human race.
Yeah, I'd go along with that. There's more than one agenda in place.
Yeah, certainly from what we've been reading about and hearing about.
And from first-hand experience as well, both of us. But we're both experiencers ourselves. It is a high-strain subject. You're right. You know, and it's not always nuts and bolts either. I think a lot of people think it's going to be, and often isn't the case. So, your interest in it, does it stem from an encounter yourself as a child, or is it just purely a kind of that kind of boyish fascination and excitement about outer space and ETs?
I think the latter of those. I think it's just fascinating. Just we live in such a vast universe. I have got quite an interest in space. I wouldn't say a massive interest, but I love looking at the stars and that sort of thing, and just wondering what's out there. As soon as you realise the vastness of the universe, the idea that we would be the only intelligent species out there is just astronomically low, I think. Of course, it's not about whether there's other intelligent species out there. It's the argument is, have they reached us? Across these vast distances of space. How are they getting here? And for a lot of people, that whole thing and just how far that is outside of our current knowledge of physics, etc. That's a decider for them that this couldn't possibly be real, or that whatever's happening is Earth-based and not extraterrestrial in origin. Because of the sheer vastness of space. But I think that's really a narrow sort of minded view. Really, it's a kind of quite contained view based on our current understanding of physics and the way the world works. And as we know, there have been many times through history where our views have changed based on new knowledge that's uncovered. And we may be dealing with species here that are millions of years ahead of us evolutionary. Who knows what type of technology they're utilizing. And for all we know, they may be able to go directly from their location in the universe to ours, just instantly like that, just an instant teleport. Anything's possible.
Yeah. Well, how would you define extraterrestrial, Dave? Because it kind of gets a bit blurred, doesn't it, between interdimensional and it's extraterrestrial. And where does the boundary stop between that and sort of you go further and further up the dimensions? I mean, where does it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, extra dimensional would essentially mean a different version of the Earth that was alongside our version of it. By extraterrestrial, I mean from a different location in our galaxy or another galaxy, as in off Earth, outside of the atmosphere of Earth. Yeah. However distant that is it Mars? Is it is it Pluto? Is it a completely different galaxy? I don't pretend to know at this stage, but I think that the number of Earth-like planets they're finding out there is absolutely fascinating, and points towards there being literally thousands upon thousands of advanced life forms out there. It's just a question of what technology they possess.
Yeah,
it doesn't necessarily have to be one or the other either, because if there are higher vibrational beings here on the Earth, then they are everywhere in the universe.
Absolutely.
So beings that are visiting us, because it's a given that they are. I mean, I think we can all agree that we know we are being visited and interacted with by beings who are not native to this plane of reality and this planet. They can be extraterrestrial and interdimensional.
I would say, and then maybe there's even time travelers as well. I mean, some people believe that, and there is some evidence to back it up. In some cases, there seems to be some, that what they've been told is that they're from our future and they're being sent back to interact with us, and there's something that humans have created or whatever, and they're sending back in time. Or even more evolved human beings, that are coming backwards in time. As I say, I don't pretend to have all the answers as to their origins, but all I can say is that the evidence that these beings, wherever they're from, are real and are not sort of imaginary or just all hoaxes or whatever is just absolutely massive.
Yeah.
So before we dive in too much into kind of the nature of the beings, have you ever had an experience yourself, David?
I've had a UFO sighting in 2009, and I've also had some ghost experiences back at university. Obviously, we're talking about UFOs and aliens here, but there was a few incidents that happened to me back at one of my share houses down in Plymouth, which I would have to say were probably ghost related. My UFO sighting. I've actually had two sightings actually, but the second one I'm pretty convinced was probably the ISS. The sighting in 2009 is yet to be explained, and it actually took place in a UFO hotspot on a UFO skywatch.
Right.
I can't argue with that. It did. So people say, do people really see UFOs more often in UFO hotspots? Well, I had a UFO sighting in one. Is it more likely that when you go out and do a UFO skywatch, you're more likely to see than just standing in your back garden? Well, again, I can't argue by the fact that I did have a UFO sighting while on a skywatch. Coincidence or not, I don't know. So basically, this happened down in Wiltshire, a place called Warminster. Warminster is famous in UFO circles. They had what's known as a UFO flap or UFO wave in the late 70s to mid 80s there. And lots of people were reporting seeing things and also hearing very, very strange sounds. Now, of course, when people put out that they've seen things in the paper, obviously some of that, you may get people joining the bandwagon essentially. But also you're going to have more people looking up at the sky, and that's important. So if more people are looking up, they're more likely to see things. Therefore, it's incremental, and so on and so on. And that's how an area could become a UFO hotspot. But they had this wave of sightings that seemed to start about mid-80s. People have seen things since. I've spoken with numerous people, I would say very believable individuals who've had UFO sightings down there. Some of them have been other ufologists, have had incredible experiences down there. And in 2009, there was a paranormal conference going on down there. It's called the Weird Paranormal Conference. I'm not entirely sure whether it's still running. This is a Weird 2009 Paranormal Conference, and it was a weekend job, so 2 days of speakers, covering all sorts of stuff, not just UFOs. But to break up the 2 days, they decided to do a skywatch, and the location they chose for this was Cradle Hill which is one of the. It's a really good location for sky watchers in the outskirts of Warminster town, and essentially it's got a really nice view of the sky in most directions. It's really nice location. There's also some MOD owned land, so it's alongside a military base, which is important and may or may not have played a factor. But it got to about 11 o'clock at night, I believe it was. Maybe it was earlier, actually. No, I'm probably thinking 10 o'clock. Sorry, 10 o'clock. Now, by this time, quite a lot of the people that had originally gone on the Skywatch and headed back to the hotels, they were just there for a short time. I'd say there was probably about 20 people left. There were some TV crews there earlier in the evening, but I think by this time they'd left. They'd just done a piece for the local telly, and then they'd headed home. So there was about 20 people left, which included myself, the researcher Malcolm Robinson, the UFO-themed band CE4 were up there, some of the members of BUFOG, etc. And it was quite dark by that point. Stars were out, lovely clear night. And it got to about 10 o'clock, and all of a sudden there's these weird flashes coming from this nearby hillside. It was kind of a dip in the valley, and beyond that it seemed to be quite low down near the ground. And they were intermittent. It was kind of on-off, sort of very bright blue electrical flashes, very, very odd. So not like a constant strobe, it was just on-off black flickering. And this went on for about 5 or so minutes, and it's just really odd. It looked a bit like sheet lightning down at ground level, and that was it. It just stopped. So about half an hour later, we're out there looking around at the sky. Absolutely lovely night, as I said. And somebody calls out, "Oh, there's a jet coming in," because obviously we're near MOD-owned land, so we figured there's probably a few military flights nearby. And we look to the east across Warminster, and sure enough, there's what appears to be a large object. It looks about jet-sized, I would say. It's very, very dark, so you could just make out the silhouettes against the sky. Couldn't really see the shape. Unfortunately, nobody had some superbly good night vision camera equipment on them that night up there, so we couldn't get an exact view of the shape, but I'm very aware that it was quite a sizable object, and it was moving fast like a jet, and it had a white light on it, just a single white light. So straight away that's abnormal, because you expect to see other navigation lights, red, green, etc.
Yeah.
As it gets nearer, all of a sudden this white light just flares up, and boom, and stuff like that, and everybody's, whoa, what's going on here? And it stays lit really, really bright for a couple of seconds. So it's not like on-off, like a strobe. It stays brightly lit. And then it died back down. And then there was another light on it. It was a dark turquoise-coloured light. So somewhere between green and blue. Little light. Very odd colour. I've never seen it on any other plane before. Dark turquoise colour. Very unusual. And then a couple of seconds later, the white light flares up again. It's doing this continuously. And it gets nearer, and we realise there's absolutely no sound coming from it at all. So all night we've been hearing planes on the horizon. I mean, you know the way sound travels further after dark, doesn't it? It's very easy to hear things in the distance. This thing, whatever it was big. It was flying fast like a jet. It wasn't very high up. I'd say it was a few 100 feet above us. You know, I was trying to take in as much as I could from the sighting. So I was very aware it was quite low in the atmosphere, sort of similar height a helicopter would fly at. Definitely, if it was making a noise, it would definitely seem to have been within range to hear some sound coming from it. But it was completely silent. And it came in towards us and flew over the hill, and then arced away from us and vanished into the distance. And even in the distance, miles away, you could still see this white flaring light come up and then die back down. Completely unexplained. I interviewed a number of people who were up there on the hill. One of my friends, an aviation expert, has been in the military, absolutely confirmed there's no known military aircraft, military drones or anything. And even military drones tend to make a kind of low humming sound, and this thing was completely silent. So to this day, it's unexplained. Was it alien? I can't say. As I said, lots of other people have had experiences with incredible objects. It didn't perform any incredible maneuvers or anything like that. But it's unexplained, so therefore a UFO.
We can cut. Sorry, I was going to say we can cut the filmer if you want, because I've noticed the sun is shining on you, and you're leaning further and further over to keep it out of your eyes. Is that painful?
Yeah, no, not at all. Sorry, give me a second. Let me sort that out.
Either that, or you're about to be abducted.
I'm going to put the radiator
down as well, and maybe
hot in here.
Maybe open the window. Yeah, we need to turn the radiator off as well. It's to cook in here.
Is that better?
We're in the bedroom, and it's very small room. So
yeah.
How's that looking now?
That's better.
That's better. No, I was more concerned about you because it looks so intense.
I couldn't. To be fair, I've been looking this way, so I couldn't actually see that coming through the window.
It's one of those nights. Maybe your body was doing it subconsciously. You were kind of leaning over, away from the light. So.
I away from the light. Yeah, where were we? Sorry, we're talking about the UFO signing. Yeah.
That sounds very much like you had a visitation. I mean, we know from doing CE5 that when you gather under the stars, even if you're not intentionally meditating, you are giving off an intention, and that intention is we want to make contact, whether it's conscious or subconscious, and you will attract those species that are listening for that signal, and they will come and check you out and see what you're about. So that sounds to me like a classic encounter, but I've never heard a case before of people gathering under the stars and not consciously wanting to initiate contact, but that does very much sound like you had a craft come and check you out. So and the anomalous light pattern. Oh, hang on, I think our internet's dropping out.
Yes, you're breaking up.
Yeah, it'll come back. Are we still there? Are we all right?
Yeah, you come back now. Sorry, dropped a second. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Go on.
There's some interesting elements of that. I mean, obviously on our sighting, I don't think anybody was attempting to do anything like that on the Skywatch.
Not consciously. What's up with our internet?
Does it need to go out the door?
No. Practice meditation, etc. You're still breaking up there.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what's up with this. It should be fine. Let me just check the signal. No, we're fine. And maybe because the door's shut and it's getting in the way for the...
You normally have it on the doorstep, don't you?
No, that was when we were connecting to next doors.
Oh, okay.
It might be that it can't get to Alexa. Let me just move her a bit.
Okay. Yeah, we've got a cube from 3, which we can move around, so we're just going to try and make it a bit closer. Yeah, it's normally fine.
Yeah, no, I know, but I've not had the door shut in here before.
No.
I think it's a bit like Doctor Who. It doesn't do wood.
No.
So... have the door shut, it doesn't like it. Yeah.
That's better anyway, isn't it?
Yeah. No, that's cool. So how often do you guys go out, Dave? Is it about once a month or
what with the Skywatch thing?
Yeah.
Oh, and only about twice a year. The reason for that is I find that you get more people turning up if it's only every so often. If it became a too regular thing, I think the numbers would drop quite substantially, to be fair. You get your select group of individuals would probably come along to each one. But I like to kind of drum up support and kind of, if we only do them every once in a while, you tend to get more people sort of all come together for it. And I think it's a lot more fun when you got a lot more people there on the watches. It's just more of a social experience. You know, there's numerous sides to going on the Skywatch. A lot of people, you know, probably outside the UFO community would think it was a complete waste of time, you know, going and standing on top of a hill somewhere and staring at the sky when you can just do that anywhere, you know, because obviously you can, and I'm not saying that you're not going to see something by just going and standing in your own garden, for example. However, it's not the only element, you know, it's not all about that. I mean, it is about that. Obviously, the whole ethos is that you hope to see something, but, you know, we've had plenty of Skywatches where we haven't seen any UFOs, right? But we've had a great evening, and it's been really social experience for people to come together and just have a chat under the stars. And we always have a great time, whatever happens. Yeah, even when the weather's bad. Yeah, I mean, you know, Rachel, you were on one of the ones where it was quite misty and pretty cold and everything.
Yeah,
and you couldn't see much of the sky. And we did another Skywatch a number of years ago, but Bonnybridge, which, again, while we're talking about UFO hotspots, Bonnybridge is famous for a UFO hotspot area. It's up in Scotland, and I was up there for the Scottish Worldwide Paranormal Conference. It was a big festival thing that was going on with lots of speakers they called in, and I was invited to give a talk there. Well, it was only about 10 or so miles away from Bonnybridge, so I thought, what a perfect opportunity to go and organise a Skywatch at Bonnybridge. And we did. Malcolm Robinson assisted with getting support for that. and it was massive. You know, there was about sort of 70 people turned up for it, including Billy Buchanan, who's the councillor from Bonnybridge, who accepted that something was going on and held massive sort of conferences back in the day to talk with the residents about what they were seeing. You know, so basically, you know, fully accepted that something was going on. So he was there. So it was a really big event. But here's the thing: we got out there and we had typical Scottish weather. So we were standing there with horizontal rain flying into our faces. We couldn't see anything up there. It was just heavy rain. And I'm being interviewed on camera with this rain hitting me in the face. It was but it was a fun experience again. You know, we got a lot from that, even though, you know, we couldn't observe anything up in the sky. You know, so it's just a part of it. And I really do enjoy putting sky watchers together. Of course, more regularly than that, we have our meetings, and I organise monthly meetings in Albury, North Birmingham. So we get together and I get different speakers from around the country, or international speakers when they happen to be in the UK. We share documentaries and I show new films with permission, that sort of thing. So yeah, we have a good time. We've got a nice little community going. I don't think it's as big as it could be. I think that a lot of the people these days with the internet age tend to sit at home and watch things instead of actually kind of go along to things. And I think that's not just damaging UFO subjects. It's kind of, there's lots of different areas where, you know, people have noticed a significant drop in the number of people actually turning up to things. And I think it's just a sign of the times more than anything, you know.
Yeah, people want to be in the comfort of their own home, I suppose, don't they? And look at their leisure. And
but you
miss all the community with that. You know, you miss all the kind of.
That's the thing, isn't it? I mean, that's why we hold our conferences, because it'd be so easy just to go on the internet with everything. But it's a shame to let that go. But
it is.
We need to get together, don't we? There's nothing. There's nothing like getting together in person, is there? And being able to see people face to face.
Exactly.
I would say definitely with a fringe subject such as ufology, it's very, very important, you know, because there's such a large proportion of the public either dismiss it out of fact, or are kind of sitting on the sidelines with it and aren't prepared to kind of look any further into it. I don't think they're necessarily ignorant. I just think that the people just are kind of happy to accept that it may be real or may not be real, and it doesn't impact their lives on a direct level. Obviously, if people have an experience, it can sometimes massively impact their lives, but not always. I mean, I've spoken with people who've had contact experiences, have seen beings, etc., and couldn't care less. You know, they've had the experience, they want to go on with their life. I might bring them back up later on to try to find out if anything else has happened, and they're just like, I don't care anymore, I just want to get on with my life. You know, so even after having a close encounter of that kind, they're putting it to one side without. There's just as many people who have an encounter, and from that they'll get a lifelong interest in the subject because they'll realise, you know, that there's no kind of denying it because they've seen it with their own eyes, you know.
It boggles the mind actually. I mean, everyone's different, but I've met people who, you know, who've looked into the subject or know about it, and you're right, they just don't seem to care. They're like, well, you know, how it doesn't really affect my life, and you know, I'm happy to go back to my 9 to 5 in the matrix kind of existence. I couldn't do that, you know, and it was an experience that woke me up. It was an encounter that kind of switched the lights on for me and made me look into life outside. And I can't imagine having an encounter or any kind of spiritual experience, not just a UFO experience, and then going, that was great, but you know, back to Corrie. And you know, it's like, what the hell? How do you? I'm not belittling anyone, you know, because I say everyone's different, but
absolutely,
it boggles my mind that people can just go, that's happened, back to life. You know, I can't imagine it, how you could do that personally.
Yeah, I mean, I've also seen people over the years who've had an interest in the subject for quite a number of years, and then all of a sudden it's kind of like they don't have that interest anymore. And I can't imagine that either, really, because I think it's something that once you've woken up to it, it can't possibly kind of fail to be fascinating. I mean, it's endlessly fascinating to me. You know, will I ever get the full answers to the questions that are on my mind regarding it? No, absolutely not. And some people have told me they think, you know, it's a waste of time what I do, because I'm never going to get a definite answer on it. You know, but
what are the questions you're trying to get answered, Dave?
Well, really, exactly what's going on with the subject and exactly what they're doing, where they're from, who they are, why they're visiting us. We can make assumptions based on the evidence available, and you can see similarities across cases, and you can put together what you believe to be a number of agendas that these beings have. But it still doesn't answer the big burning questions. And of course, even if the beings themselves say that they're extraterrestrial, which they have on numerous occasions, how do we know that they're telling the truth? How do we know that they're not something else entirely, and they're using the extraterrestrial thing as a kind of cover for what they really are? You've always got to take that into assumption. If we're dealing with other intelligent species here who are at least as intelligent as we are, then they can easily mask what's really going on, and give people cover stories essentially, and they do that through screen memories, etc.
I mean, hear about hidden agendas and military kind of involvement and so on. And then to the other extreme, you have beings that don't actually identify with being from a particular star system. They have a completely different name for it, or don't have a name at all for where they are, and they're having to kind of say something to the humans that they're encountering just to satisfy their curiosity. So it's not so clear cut, is it? It's
not clear cut, no. And like you say, you can spend the rest of your life trying to answer questions and just finding more questions.
But that's the wonder of it all, isn't it?
It is part of the wonder of it all, actually. I think.
I'd rather be asking those questions than ignoring it, pretending like it wasn't there. I mean, when you've got people have gone on witness testimony right up to president level, prime ministers, etc. There are so many fantastic testimonials given by high-ranking military personnel, astronauts, physicists, everything across the board. Astronomers, some people say astronomers don't have UFO sightings. That's complete nonsense. There's lots of astronomers who've seen things and gone on the record. There's people very high up in government saying that these things are real, are being investigated behind the scenes, and that's been we've got statements like that going right back to the 1940s, right up to the present day. Now, of course, the big thing over the last couple of years, of course, has been the Pentagon's admission that it funded this top secret program to investigate UFOs, and the owner of that program has gone on the record to state that they've captured on military camera numerous times objects massively performing and outmaneuvering their own aircraft. So, I would say that America is probably on the forefront of military power on the planet. So if they're massively exceeding the Americans, then who are they? Very, very unlikely it's Russians flying around in these things, or Chinese or whatever. These things are from outside. The other military in those other countries are also looking into them in exactly the same way. It's like when you take things back to the Second World War with the Foo Fighters. The British thought the Foo Fighters were German in origin and Japanese in origin. Japanese thought they were German, and it was only afterwards that they found out there were nobodies and that nobody was responsible for them. I think that's what's going on today.
Everyone thought it was everyone else's secret tech, and then they discovered that it didn't belong to anybody. I think
it's just going on worldwide. So
and it's been going on for a long time. It's been going on for a long time. I think in this day and age, knowing even just in the last sort of couple of decades, as we've found out that there are exoplanets everywhere, and a lot of them are kind of in Goldilocks zones. Anybody who still denies, I know that there are two questions. One is there life out there? The other one is it coming here? There's two very distinct things. But anyone who denies nowadays that there is life elsewhere in the universe is insane. I think it's insanity. Even on our own little ball of rock here, you can look anywhere on the surface of the planet to any extremes of temperature or environment or toxicity, and you find life of some description.
Absolutely.
Life wants to exist and it thrives everywhere. For us to be audacious, or what's the word I'm looking for? Ignorant or brazen enough to suggest that life only flourishes here on this little planet when there are hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone. It's insane. It's like going to the beach and lifting up a rock and not expecting to find life. It's going to be everywhere. But So I think what I'm driving at is in this day and age now, it's probably a given. I mean, obviously we have a different perspective because we've got first-hand experience, but to the average person in the street who maybe doesn't look into the subject or even care perhaps, it should be a given that the universe is probably teeming with life, whether it's intelligent or not. But the complete other side of this coin is, are they coming here? And if so, like you say, why are they coming here? What is their reason for being here?
Yes.
Now, I don't know what your thoughts on this are, but I think I would argue it's fairly obvious that they're not coming here to blow us up or to take us over, because for the simple fact that that hasn't happened. You know, and if it was going to happen, I think it probably would have done. Maybe that's naivety on my part, because I'm trying to assume that I can think like an alien would. But I think it's fairly obvious that they're not here to, you know, just enslave us or destroy us. What are your thoughts on that? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely on that front. Yeah, there's hardly any cases on record where these beings have seemingly attacked our military or other people. There's countless cases on record where they've acted defensively. So we have sent jets to intercept them, and they've essentially just flown away. You know, all they've done. And so we'll get to within a certain distance of them, and they'll move away. Now, if they've got a more advanced technology, then there's nothing to stop them from dematerializing people or whatever. You know, but they don't seem to do that.
No.
There is a number of cases where pilots vanished from their aircraft in the 1950s that I'm aware of. So you know, where they were intercepting them, and the plane crashed, and when they checked the plane, there's no pilot, and never to be seen again. You know, but let's be fair, we're attacking them. We're attacking them.
Yeah, we're the ones being hostile. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And perhaps those pilots were taken out of the craft to prevent them from crashing and dying after they interfered with the craft. So
yeah, exactly. Anything's possible.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's no real sign that they sort of have malicious intent, and as you say, probably would have happened. You've got the hybrid thing going on. One of the agendas, which appears to be a mixing of their DNA with ours to create these half human, half alien beings. And some researchers look at that and think that that's quite sort of hostile in nature, and that perhaps they're planning some sort of takeover or replacement of us in due course. And of course, I couldn't say that that's not the case, but from the many contact cases I've directly investigated, nobody has said that they've heard that from them, that that's what they're there for. I've had numerous contactees tell me that they're being used to populate other planets elsewhere in the universe.
Yeah.
You know, they're building these beings as a kind of mix of us and them. You know, they've got both sides to them, and then they're using them to populate other planets, which which may or may not be true. Of course, you hear many different things through many cases.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier on, you can't believe everything you hear, because if you did, it'd just be a free for all. But at the same time, you can look at observations and see things repeated again and again. You've got the environmental aspects of contact is very, very interesting. A lot of people report having visions that seem to be showing the world blowing up or devastation, fires burning, etc. Almost like they're kind of showing people what's going to happen, that we might, potentially destroy ourselves in the future. Now, you can argue that two ways. You could say they're doing it to protect us, but maybe they're sort of harvesting us for materials, and and don't want that harvesting to stop, so are worried that we're going to kill ourselves for that reason. So you could look at that on a positive or sort of negative angle, really. But
yeah, sorry, go on.
That's right. Yeah, but you can't argue the fact that that's an aspect of some contact experiences. Not always, I will say, and it's not always. Sometimes it's a direct vision inside their mind that's projected from one of the beings, seems to be, and at other times they're sat in a chair and they see a screen, and on the screen they see these kind of images, and they're very, very rarely told much about why they're being shown those things. And you have to ask, well, if they're showing these random individuals, how can those individuals change anything, on a worldwide level? And it might be that the beings aren't aware of that. Maybe, in trying to work out why that's happening, you're humanizing something that isn't human.
Yes.
Very true.
So we can only guess at the reasons why they might be doing that. Mm-hmm. And what part to play these abductees, contactees, whatever you want to call them, may have, in the coming years. And what they're preparing them for, in showing them these things, how that's supposed to impact things. You've got similarly, again, there's the interest to our nuclear armaments as well. That's another angle of the subject.
Yeah.
So there's many cases right back to the start of the development of nukes in America, where UFOs have been seen on the outskirts of bases, like they're checking out our nuclear capabilities.
Yeah.
In many cases on record, as I'm sure you're aware, if you looked into the subject, of them interacting with our nukes in various ways, switching them on or off, temporarily disabling them, bringing down missiles out of the sky. These cases have gone on, and military personnel have gone on record to say that these things took place.
Yes.
They've got absolutely nothing to gain from coming out with that information if there's no fact to it. Why would they just come up with that as a random story? Yeah,
they're going to destroy their career if they come out and talk about that kind of stuff.
Some of these things have been officially acknowledged by the MOD or the CIA, have acknowledged that they took place.
Yeah.
I find that fascinating.
It's probably very, very obvious that I sit on the side of the fence that the ETs are predominantly non-hostile.
Yeah. Excuse me, we've got our mascot.
We've got our mascot with us.
Alan the alien.
It's getting hostile. It's getting hostile.
He's usually over there. He wanted to be in on this one. Yeah, but the thing you just mentioned about the on-record cases of these beings, let's call them, rather than calling them ETs, interacting with nukes and shutting them down. That to me is. Maybe I'm just being biased because I want to see them as positive, but that to me is a very clear message. It's not like they come in and blow the crap out of the nuclear facility. They come in and shut them off, and then fly away again. And it's like to me that's them saying you shouldn't be doing this, and we have the ability to shut them down. Please stop playing with matches, children.
Even when they are attacked, they're not attacking back.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think of Kaz Clark's case actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
I've got a slightly different take on what that is actually.
Go on.
And I'm not saying that isn't what's happening with it. I'm not saying isn't that, but I'm thinking if they're kind of anti us using nukes, then why not do it on a planetary level and just switch off all the nukes? To me, what it feels like, because it's quite random. It seems to be random missiles in random locations at random times on different bases. There's no clear pattern to it. Now I'm wondering, and I'm not saying that this is what's going on, that it's not a display of power, that they are showing our military forces what they're capable of. So stand back and don't try to attack us. Let us get on with what we're doing here on the planet.
Okay.
If we want to, we can switch off your nukes at will. And there's a case in Russia where they actually turned on a number of nuclear warheads for I think it was about 30 seconds or so, absolutely terrifying the people on the base. Obviously, if those nukes are launched, that could have kick-started a world war. The nukes went back off after 30 seconds, but it's not terrifying. I think the fact that these incidents are occurring and continue to occur, I think it's probably one of the reasons why the UFO cover-up is occurring. It's one thing them admitting to craft with beings flying around in our skies and just observing us from the air, isn't it? It's a whole other ball game saying that they are in charge of the skies and can outmaneuver our military and can switch on and off our nukes. By the way, they take people from their own cars or beds whenever they want to. And we can't stop them, and they do all this without consent.
Right. So you think the cover-up is because they are vastly superior to us in terms of ability and power, and it's kind of like the authorities not wanting the public to panic by them turning around and going, there's absolutely nothing we can do about this, they've got us by the balls, so we'd rather lie about it and cover it up than admit that they're out there. Is that what you think? Is that what you're saying?
I think that's one of the reasons for the cover-up. The panic angle, yes, some people would panic by that. Some people would be okay with it, and some people would adjust to being okay with it after time. It'd be very, very hard for people to accept that they were incapable of stopping the abduction thing from taking place. And I think if people came to the realization that was going on, and that they could interact or take anybody at any point and conduct experiments on them, or, you know, take samples, I think that would frighten a hell of a lot of people. You know, I've spoken with people over the years who are frightened of the subject because of that, and that's without the government's acknowledgement that it actually is going on. I think another reason for the cover-up would probably be the control of any crash material that they've got hold of. UFOs have either crash landed accidentally or been purposely shot down by the military. They would be in control of that technology. They'd be wanting to back engineer that. They wouldn't want to be sharing that. Let's say the Americans, for example, got hold of a piece of tech, alien tech. They wouldn't want to share that. They'd want to back engineer it, see how it worked, see how they could militarize it, etc. I think that whole element of it would also play a part in this, because to acknowledge it was real, pretty much every single scientist on the planet would all want a piece of that pie. They'd all be wanting to check out that material, biological or otherwise. It's entirely possible. Have this tech.
Perhaps they already have this tech and these ways of harnessing energy and traveling and transporting things, and that they don't want to reveal that because it would upset the whole economy, wouldn't it? If we have the energy and so forth.
The director of Lockheed, I think it was Lockheed Martin, went on record. I forget the year. I know he went on record and said that we already have the technology to take ET home.
He did, yeah. That was one of the last things he said before he passed on. And to this day, it's argued about whether that was a real statement or whether he was just kind of having a bit of a joke. But a very, very interesting statement nonetheless. Especially for somebody so high up. I mean, as the developer of stealth technology. So
well, there's no smoke without fire, is there? Yeah,
it suggests that they're behind the scenes. They're working on black projects that are far in advance of what we're currently seeing in our military forces. Some of which may be alien in origin.
It's interesting to get your perspectives, David, because generally the UFO field seems to be kind of underpinned by a current of fear, more so than the flip side, which I do want to swing over to and just get your opinions on.
Sure.
Because obviously we come from a perspective of first-hand experience with, let's call them ETs for the sake of argument right now, and craft. You know, we both had encounters with beings and with craft in the sky and telepathic messages and communication, and it's very much, I think I can speak for both of us, it very much comes from the opposite of a place of fear, where the experiences are about love and about our own growth and development as a species. And there's very much this kind of aspect of involvement where it's asked for, but I know abductions do go on. That's a given. But the flip side of the ET phenomena that a lot of people are not aware of, I think, is that within the contact movement, there are people like us and around the world who have a kind of a spiritual take on the ET phenomena. That it's very much about them observing and guiding us, not getting too involved, because there's this element of free will involved, and that we're stewards for the planet, and they'll step in if we go too far to a degree. And personally, that's what I think the kind of shutting down of random silos is about. Personally, that's only my opinion. It's not. I don't see it as a kind of chest beating maneuver. Right? It's like it's almost to encourage thought. Like, you shouldn't be doing this. You know, when we could turn them all off, but we're not going to, because that would be an invasion of your free will. But we're going to indicate to you as a kind of nudge that the greater, collection of species out here, we don't do this stuff. We don't bomb the crap out of each other. So, you're going down the wrong path. But what is your take on the idea that the ETs might actually have an agenda which is not negative, for lack of a better word? What do you think?
I don't think they are negative at all. I think they are misunderstood.
Good answer.
I think a lot of the time this fear angle from the contact phenomena comes from the just how obscure the experiences are, how different they are to normality, how cryptic the beings are. They very rarely tell the individual what's happening to them. If they do tell them what's happening to them, it's using kind of very cryptic language. They might tell them a few words. They'll often tell them not to be afraid. They'll calm them down, and they'll sometimes do things to directly calm them down. Quite often, I've seen they'll put their hand on the individual's head. I've had that reported numerous times. That the being primarily grey, but obviously greys are not the only species which are talked about here with contact. But yeah, there's been numerous cases I've dealt with where greys have put their hand on the individual's head, and it seems to sort of calm them down. I think that they've got the contactee's best interests at heart. Almost all the time, they'll put them back either exactly where they found them or close by.
Yeah.
Why it's sometimes close by and why exactly the right place, I can't pretend to answer. They usually redress them. If they've been undressed in the experience, they'll attempt to put their clothes back on. Sometimes not fully, fully successful on that front. They might put on inside out or whatever. But and there's a number of cases I've dealt with where the individuals believe that the ETs are protecting them in a way, where they'll have had one or more experiences where they could have been damaged or even killed by an accident, and something has saved them at the last second. They've either had a premonition that's going to happen, or they've kind of had an invisible force push them out of the way, or things like this. Now, I've heard this. If you hear this of one person, you would say, okay, maybe they're just imagining it or whatever, or reading into things. But I've had this reported to me by quite a number of different contactees from completely different backgrounds, different places, and it seems to be the message I'm getting from it is that they care about the individuals they're taking, the individuals they're in contact with.
Yeah.
They're not just harvesting them for materials.
Yeah.
If there were, why not just take them and never, never see them again?
Why bother bringing us back?
Yeah.
And quite often they'll give them positive messages, mention the environmental angle earlier on. That seems to me to be more positive than negative in nature. I would say that they're trying to warn us that we're going to destroy ourselves. We don't know how rare what we've got here on Earth is. We might be very rare in terms of our development and variety of life that we've got on our planet.
It seems to draw a lot of attention.
I've heard that the Earth is kind of although life is abundant, that Earth is kind of a jewel for the variety of life that's here. I've heard that from more than one source, that we're kind of almost like a...
And the human life as well, that we're quite a unique mix
of alien races.
Different races and ideologies.
So I think that where people are frightened by their experiences, a lot of the time through talking with them, you find out that fear is just because the beings do this without consent and won't tell them what's going on. It's pretty terrifying. There is sometimes physical pain involved. I've dealt with some people have had particular instruments used on them during these abduction experiences, that hurt. But I think in some ways it may be like a doctor and having an operation would hurt, but it's for the patient's own good. Why they're acting so cryptically, I don't know. It's probably links with the idea that this is going on covertly rather than openly. If it was going on openly, there's no reason why they wouldn't just all appear in our skies and that'd be it. There'd be no question. I think that most contact experiences occur in the middle of the night or in very rural locations. When people get taken from their vehicles, they're usually out driving alone in the middle of nowhere without anybody else around. There are many UFO cases on record where people have been in very rural locations, and it's almost like they've stumbled across the craft accidentally, and and the beings on that craft perhaps thought that nobody was going to be around, so they're up to whatever they're doing, and they don't expect to be seen by anybody. Or maybe they're aware that even if somebody does observe them and puts out the story, that a lot of the planet isn't going to believe them. Some people might believe them, some people won't believe them, and it doesn't really matter to them. So one of the arguments on that whole covert thing is if these things are trying to be covert, why are they sometimes covered in bright flashing lights?
Yeah, good point.
It's a very good point.
Why even appear at all? Yeah, there's lots of cases on record where people have seen these craft sort of materialize from a clear sky or dematerialize, suggesting either that they're kind of moving, shifting dimensions, or that they're using some sort of stealth technology that we haven't got yet, but are working towards. Of course, we're already working towards invisibility stealth, and we've obviously got technology now available that can make us appear invisible on radar. So we're already partially the way there. So it's hard to read into what's going on with that. But again, that suggests that they're being covert. So that when they appear, when they're seen, again, we don't know exactly what they're doing. They may need to appear a certain amount of time to, I don't know, build up energy again, for example. There's quite a number of cases on record where UFOs have been seen over reservoirs or even drawing up water out of lakes or rivers, which is fascinating. Why would they be doing that? Are they doing that to test, or are they doing that as some sort of coolant for their craft of some kind? And they need to do that, and maybe they need to appear sometimes for particular reasons. There are also cases on record where they've quite blatantly shown themselves on purpose, almost like a display. Take, for example, the Phoenix Lights incident, which some people may say was flares. I would say that the flares was a cover-up for the actual event, which took place a number of hours before. So the flare drop, if you have a look at the timeline, the object was seen sort of half 6 to half 7 sort of time. It wasn't until about 10:30 that the flares were dropped. I believe the military dropped those flares on purpose so that people would see the flares, and then they could then blame the sightings of the lights of the object on the flares.
Yeah, that's a fairly standard tactic actually as well. There's lots of cases of that being done. Yeah. You were about to ask a question.
There's a couple of things. I was going to just ask you if you had any particular cases that you that stuck in your mind that have kind of stuck with you, that are most notable or exceptional to you out of all the cases you've seen. Can you relay one that you'd say is really stuck in your mind?
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful cases that I've dealt with in terms of contact. I mean, you've got different types of things, haven't you? I've had cases where, if you're talking about multiple witnesses, I've had cases which have been reported by lots of different groups of witnesses from around the country of the same multiple craft. So that was very impressive. If you're talking contact, there's a case I investigated back in 2010. From Detroit, which the lady now no longer lives in the UK, but she had a couple of abduction experiences within a week of one another. It was a sort of trigger for her, so she'd put a lot of other experiences that happened earlier in her life to one side, to the back of her mind, just tried to get on with her life and not really thought much of them. And it was only through talking with me through the investigation that she looked back at those experiences and realised she'd had contact since childhood, and it appeared that her brother and her mother may have also as well. However, these two experiences that happened in late 2010, she had very, very interesting experiences. They involved screen memories, they involved an examination procedure, there were some unusual elements. But one of the fascinating things of that case was that her husband made security cameras for a living, infrared security cameras, and he agreed after the first experience. She was quite frightened to go to sleep after it happened. A lot of the time with contact, when somebody has an experience, they subconsciously are aware it's taken place, whether they fully remember the exact memories or not. They're aware it's taken place in their mind, and they'll be very frightened to go to bed or stay in the location where it occurred. So she was getting more and more scared as the days followed on from that first experience. And her husband thought it was probably down to an unusual dream, not anything to do with aliens or anything. So he said, okay, well, to put your mind at ease, we'll set up a video camera in the room. We'll just leave it running each night. So they did that. They set up the camera and they started running it each night when they went to sleep. And a few days after they'd set up this camera, she has this second experience where she was. I can go into detail. It'll take a long time to go into the full detail, but essentially there was a short being alongside her who was conducting some kind of body scan on her. He had his hands over her, and he was moving down over her body and telling her different things that had gone wrong with her over time. So he told her she had a stomach ulcer, that it had healed up. She was quite scared he was going to say something like that she had cancer or something, but it didn't say. He actually put her mind at ease by telling her that she didn't. He could. It seemed to be having a telepathic communication with her. This being was also putting on a what's known as a screen memory, which is where it appears in a different form to its actual self. And it was putting on the screen memory of a small doctor character. So there's a little chap with glasses on and short red hair, and he was wearing a kind of white doctor's coat. But she knew that wasn't right, and the experience involved a regression afterwards as part of the investigation. And during that regression, we asked her to describe what this little chap looked like, and the word she used, the word she came out with was his face looks like it wants to fall off. That's what she said.
Wow.
And it was like her brain was kind of seeing past the mask that it had put up in front of itself. And when we asked her to describe the hands, she said they were human hands at first, and then she said, no, that's not right. She said the fingers are too long and pointy. So it was like her brain was kind of getting past this screen memory, and she was seeing the thing in its true form, which was probably a grey. She never fully saw it in its true form, but there was other screen memory elements to the case where she did see things in their true form. However, I'm digressing. Okay, so she has this second experience, and she wakes up from it. She knows straight away that something's taken place, and she wakes her husband up in the middle of the night, and tells him, and he tells her just to go back off to sleep, and she lies there while, and in the end drops back off. Of course, in the morning they've got the video camera, haven't they?
Yeah.
They're running at night, so they're like, well, the first thing you're going to do, you're going to check the camera, see if anything turns up. Yeah. Now, it gets to about 3:34 a.m. Just past 3:33. Some people may read into that or not. Could have just been coincidence. You get sometimes sort of numeracy type aspects of contact.
Yeah.
The same as cropping up with things, maybe 333, I don't know. Could have just been coincidence. Either way, just after 3:33 a.m., all of a sudden, it looks like the duvet cover is kind of lifting up into the air, almost like she's arching her back in the bed. And then all of a sudden it just drops, and it drops really, really flat, and it just basically looks like she's dematerialized on camera. It stayed dead flat. There's absolutely no movement in it for about 13 or so minutes. That time period seems to coincide with the length of the experience that she reported. So it wasn't like the experience that she had was like a minute long, and it wasn't like it was hours long either. It was roughly about that sort of length it would have been. About 13 minutes go by without any movement, and you can see her husband still lying there and on the night vision, and it's just impossibly flat on her side of the bed. And after about 13 minutes, all of a sudden, the duvet cover is just up really, really high, and it drops back down, and then she's just shuffling around, and she's back there in the bed. Wow. Now, you have to kind of say, well, if she wasn't dematerialized, so to speak, then she would have still been there. The only explanation is that she'd rolled into a particular position that looked like it was very flat. Yeah. However, there's some problems with that. The first problem is that she said that she had a backache. Well, I know she had backache when I spoke with her, so the back was in pain a lot of the time. She said if she rolled over in the night, if she had done that, she would have woken up straight away and jumped up out of bed, and she didn't do that. So that's an anomaly there for a start. Yeah. And secondly, she actually sent the video off for analysis, because she was, it was real footage, genuinely was real footage. It wasn't like the family wasn't playing any form of hoax. It was quite upsetting to her, to be fair, what was going on. It was quite emotional. So, yeah, obviously some people will look at the video and they'll be like, "Oh, it's a hoax being set up." But I know it wasn't, because I've seen the location it took place and I've spoken to the witnesses involved and the real deal. So they had this video footage. She sent it off to this company. They did this program for America, Fact or Fake, it's called, where they try to prove or disprove paranormal videos. And it's a whole series where they look into, quite an interesting series, it's pretty good. And they tried to disprove the video, essentially. And they said that they couldn't recreate the footage without using kind of hydraulics inside the bed or something like that.
Right.
Which it wasn't. It was a normal bed, There was no form of trickery going on. So they couldn't disprove it. And they said through speaking with her, again, they found her very, very convincing. And, so I believe that if the footage is real, which is what it appears to be, and it fits in with her experiences being real, which have lots of aspects that fit in with other contact cases, then it's a real video of somebody being dematerialized and rematerialized on camera, which is fascinating. I've seen some videos online of reported abductions taking place, and a lot of the time they've got no backing to them. There's no sort of detailed details on where it took place and who was involved and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
Whereas with this case, I directly investigated the case to a good level of depth. We did a regression, etc. And I believe it's probably genuine.
Wow.
So that for me, because of that video element, stands out. All these years later, it still stands out as an incredible case. And there were lots of other aspects to it. There was a experience she had later on that involved military. So a military abduction, or MyLab as they're called. One of the experiences had that involved. There was another experience that involved a hybrid baby that she believes was hers. So there was lots of elements there. And she had no real interest in the UFO subject, so it wasn't like she'd gone watching loads of UFO stuff or anything. She had no real interest in the subject before these things happened to her. Probably looked into things since. But lovely lady, and it was very interesting being involved directly in that case.
Wow. Just out of personal curiosity, is the footage for that case in the public domain, or is that not the case? It's sensitive.
It's in the case report. So the lady her name's Jenny, by the way. She'll be okay with that, because she's spoken at a number of conferences before she left the UK. She talked publicly on stage about what happened to her.
Okay.
But she originally she'd spoken to another ufologist, and they basically went behind her back and just put it out there straight away, because
that's not on
to make a name for himself, which I just don't condone in any way, shape, or form.
No, I was just personally interested to actually have a look at it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's in the case report. So the case report on the BUFOG website, which is www.bufog.com. All the case reports I've released over the years are all on there. Now, it's not all cases. It's probably about a quarter or a third of the full cases I've investigated. Because a lot of the time when you speak with people, they don't want, they're paranoid about the information going out there, or somebody finding out, and they're just happy to talk with me, but they don't want me to put out a case report. Yeah. And I honour that, to the letter, because I'm not like a journalist, and I don't want to be seen as like a journalist, I'll just hear things and just put it out there. I'm not trying to make a form a name for myself. All I'm about is sharing the details with the public if the witness is okay for me to do so. But Jenny was, and her case report went out on the BUFOG website, so you can find it by searching back through the contact case reports, find the Droitwich case, and it'll be in there complete with the load of stills from it and my analysis of the footage.
Excellent.
Put a link in the description.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the description to your website. So anyone else watching this who wants to come and look through the cases that you've investigated can go to bufog.com, did you say, or .co.uk?
Yes. Yeah.
Bufog.com.
Yeah.
And all the cases.
Yeah, it's all free of charge for those who want to read them. There's a lot of reading material on there. Got about 10,000 copies lined up in a row, and sit and read through them all.
It's probably a great place to start, though, for people who are interested in the subject, rather than picking up all the kind of the media spin and the fake videos on YouTube and all that, is to go to someone who genuinely investigates these cases and look at some good, honest research.
It's good that you're very rigid with the way you investigate things, and you're very grounded, because it adds validity to these cases.
Yes, absolutely. I'm grounded, but obviously at the same time I'm open-minded, and I believe that it's really going on.
Yeah.
I don't try to push my own views to any extent. Obviously, some of the aspects of my analysis would fit in with my particular views on what's going on with the subject.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't belittle anybody who's got a completely different viewpoint on what's going on. The only thing I will say is I think it's definitely non-human. I think it definitely involves other intelligences.
Yeah.
I think, obviously if you're going to say it was human, then that would be suggesting that the military or scientists or whoever out there were creating these non-human things in labs, and then they were flying around in these. It just seems it's just beyond the realms of.
Well, maybe they are human.
Yeah.
Maybe they are human, but not of this planet.
Yeah. Another option. I've heard the argument. I think I won't name drop actually, but I've heard stories that a lot of these ETs are synthetically produced by our military, and it's a bit of a fear propaganda thing. And but I'm on the fence about that. It does seem like an awful lot of effort to people, doesn't it? To create an entirely new robotic species just to fool people into thinking. Just so you can kind of ridicule the whole ET subject.
Yeah, absolutely.
Stick someone in a suit,
So, and you have to kind of, if you're going to go down that route of thinking, you have to say, well, if it's military in origin, then why are the military intercepting them or trying to find out what they are? If they know what they are already.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Why try to definitely shoot things down?
Yeah, it's a waste of money and time and resources. But to jump back on the point you just made so that it's not lost, I'll let you talk about that, but you mentioned about how perhaps they are human.
Yeah, there's some visitors are human, as you stated at the beginning. Some of these beings are humanoid, but they're not of planet Earth. So just wanted to sort of put that in there.
Yeah, the interesting thing with that, some people will say, okay, if aliens exist, if they're from elsewhere, then they'd look something like unimaginable, 20 tentacles and millions lives.
That's
true though. A number of years ago, I went up to Leicester Space Centre, and I saw there a short documentary that had been put together by a number of scientists, suggesting what alien life forms may look like. Yeah. Now they had no interest in trying to push the UFO angle or abduction angle or anything with this. It was purely scientific. And the creature that they came up with, it just looked a lot like a grey. It had 2 arms, 2 legs. It had a bigger head because it used its mind. It had large eyes, so it could survive better or see in low light conditions, this sort of thing. And unwittingly, they'd gone and drawn a grey. Essentially, it didn't look exactly like a grey, but it had a lot of features. So this argument that aliens, if they existed, would look unimaginable to us is nonsense. The 2 arms, 2 legs, symmetrical is a good evolved form for surviving on a planet with gravity.
I agree. It's the optimal shape to be for an intelligent species is to have 2 arms, 2 legs, and a large cranium for the brain.
But then you've got the Nordics. So the Nordics thing is very interesting. So Nordics, Pleiadians, humanoids, whatever you want to call them. Okay? So these are seen almost as much as greys. A lot of people are under the misconception that there was a lot of Nordic sightings back in the 60s and 70s and everything, and that they're not really seen anymore. That people just see greys. That's absolute nonsense. Take it from me, that's absolute nonsense. In the contact cases I deal with, some of which are still going on, are ongoing cases, people see greys. They see greys a bit more than they see Nordics, but there's a lot of Nordic cases on record. Some people see just Nordics. Some people see Nordics working with greys. Have had experiences involving both of those species. I say species, types. I don't want to assume that they're different species. The other types or species that are reported regularly are the reptilians, are quite regularly reported. Not as regularly as greys or Nordics, but these reptoid-looking beings, which are sometimes pale, very strong. A lot of people see them as malicious or evil and kind of sense that from them. And of course, there's these theories about them sort of taking over and being shapeshifters. I haven't seen enough evidence myself directly to fully believe that's going on, but I certainly believe that the reptilians are a real thing. I mean, I've had them reported of lots of people, and again, they all seem to be working together. So I've had people talk about greys working with reptilians, for example. It seems to be that these different types are in agreement with one another and are working towards common agendas.
Yeah.
But then saying that, if you look at the human race and you say, is the human race working towards a common agenda? Of course not. We've got some groups are, very benign in nature and very, very good, and then you've got other truly evil people. So it's across the range. And if we're talking about another species, then why would it not be the same for them too?
So do you think it's a very human kind of condition then, that we tend to generally look at races such as the Pleiadians and the Arcturians, the ones that look very kind of friendly and humanoid, and think, oh, they're the good guys, and then when we look at the reptilians and the greys, we have this kind of instinctive kind of, oh shit, they're the baddies because they look like predators.
Possibly. At the same time, there's probably, I can't think of any case involving Nordics where they've seen them in a kind of negative light. The experiences involving Nordics or humanoids, whatever you want to call them, usually seem quite positive in nature.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, the individuals feel that almost like they're their extended family. They treat them like they would a brother, or they feel like they know them. You can get that with the greys as well, and quite often with detailed contact cases, you'll get one particular being that the individual may have seen since childhood, and they'll recognise them, and they'll have a kind of deep connection with that one being, even though that being may look and was exactly the same as lots of other ones that they see in the experiences, which is fascinating. Again, that's an aspect that shows itself again and again. Yeah,
to us they look the same.
Well, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. The same way that we look at sheep and think they all look the same, but apparently sheep can tell each other apart by their faces. So who knew? Yeah.
Well, there we go. Yeah. The fourth type, which I haven't covered yet, the mantids or mantis beings. So these appear similar to greys in some ways, but they're more insectoid looking. They usually have very, very large eyes wrapped around the side of the head, very insectoid looking. Quite often green, almost like large praying mantises. They're sometimes seen wearing these kind of hooded robes, and sometimes people who experience these, they won't even describe them as aliens or anything. They'll for example, this was a number of years ago. I dealt with a case from Blackpool, and a girl contacted me, and she wanted to talk about a strange dream she'd had, where she'd been conversing with an 8-foot high grasshopper.
Yes,
so she called it.
Yeah.
So she was wondering why she was having this dream. She was talking with a large insect, and it was only after I told her that this was a kind of known type, that had been seen by other and I showed her some pictures online of these mantids that other contactees had drawn, and she was like, "Yeah, that was it." And she'd even described the clothing. The clothing, it was in these dark crimson coloured hooded robe with the hood up around its face. And there's other cases on record where they described exactly the same clothing. So it wasn't just that the being looked like, it was what it was wearing as well.
Yeah.
Which is, when you see the similarities between cases from people with completely different backgrounds, many of people who aren't interested at all in the UFO subject. Yeah. And let's not forget the mantids are not exactly well known, are they?
No, they're not.
They're not portrayed in the same way that greys are. I mean, greys are everywhere. I mean, you've got one sitting right between you now. Yeah, they're all over the place. I mean, adverts are on breakfast cereals, the works. Crisp packets, Space Raiders, so that's the quintessential archetypal view of what an alien looks like. And that's obviously come from real experiences, and they've put that out there as what an alien's supposed to look like. So a lot of people are familiar with what a grey looks like, but not that many people would know what a Nordic is supposed to look like, or a reptilian or a mantid. They're a lot rarer, I would say.
Yeah. It's funny, I've heard it said that the mantids are one of the more kind of one of the more advanced races spiritually, actually, and not religiously. I'd make that clear, that distinction there, but that they are very spiritually mature and very, very caring and loving beings, and it's almost like a lesson for humanity there. I think that you can't judge a book by its cover, because by appearance they look like they want to tear your head off and eat you for lunch. but they are actually these kind of incredibly loving, very, very compassionate beings who are often sort of in charge, kind of stay in the background from what I've heard and read myself. They're not kind of directly involved. Yeah, and the appearances can be deceiving.
Yeah, and it goes across the board, doesn't it, for all the races and species out there?
Yeah.
But you can't just pigeonhole them into one category.
We can't. No, I think we kind of get that from pop culture and sci-fi movies, you know, and the good guys look like this and the bad guys look like that. I've heard stories myself about even whether what people, like you say, people assume the reptilians are evil, if that is even a thing. It's another human concept. I've heard stories about good reptilians, to put good in inverted commas.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So just like humans can be across the board, there's no reason they wouldn't be too. And exactly. Have different groups working towards different agendas, maybe even at war with one another for all we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We won't know, I think, until we clean up our act here on Earth and actually get out there amongst them.
Yeah.
I think some of the bigger questions will remain questions until we have reached a point where they lift the veil, so to speak, whether it's physical or not, and allow us, because I think there is a quarantine personally and a bit of suppression going on to keep us from venturing too far until we stop blowing each other up. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think at the moment they're working covertly, but there's no reason to suggest that at some point in our future they may decide to reveal themselves to the human race. Maybe when they believe we are ready to be aware of that, whether that's on the spiritual level or on a physical level, mental level, whatever.
I think,
when we're living peacefully, I suppose, is probably a key thing.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
There's no distinction, really. The spiritual and physical thing, I think, are the same thing. Really.
Yeah.
They go hand in hand.
Yeah.
There are both aspects, especially when contact's involved. And I think it's a reason why a lot of ufologists steer clear of the contact subject, because of these more unusual esoteric kind of aspects, because they want to remain grounded in the kind of nuts and bolts, solid physical objects only sort of level.
As you probably know, you can't.
No. Yeah, I mean, it's all intertwined. Take for example the psychic phenomena. There's a direct link with the psychic phenomena and contact, and in over half of the cases I've dealt with, and the individuals have expressed, should we say, one or more psychic type abilities, or they believe that they've got one or more psychic type abilities. Sometimes it's quite often they'll say that they've had premonitions of future events, and it may be linked with them directly, or it might be random things that then come true that don't appear to have any relevance to saving their life or anything, or stopping an accident. Then they'll just randomly have these premonitions, which often appear to them as dreams, or sometimes very occasionally kind of day dreams, essentially. So they'll just have a vision in their mind that will come to them. So more often than not, there'll be dreams that they'll remember in the morning, and they may know that they're a premonition at the time, or they may not put them down to a premonition until the thing actually happens, and then they realise that it was a premonition. I've had that described to me quite regularly by people I've been involved with. So you'd think that these two things are completely apart, but then you have to say, well, why are so many of these contactees psychic? Is it that they've got their psychic abilities as some sort of side effect from having contact with these beings? Because let's not forget, the beings talk telepathically with one another, and speaking psychically and talking with the individual. Does that do something and unlock something in their brain which gives them these additional abilities? Or is it the other way around? Is it that the individual has been psychic since birth, and that the beings are interested in them because they've got psychic abilities, and that's why they're taking those particular individuals? I don't know the answer to that. In most cases where they've had psychic abilities, it kind of goes back to childhood, but also their experiences tend to go back to childhood, so it's hard to differentiate whether contact has been the cause of those abilities, or whether the ability led to contact.
You can't see which caused what, but in the sort of research I've been reading about we've both been reading Mary Rodwell's research about the new human. It would suggest that there are children being born having memories of being you know, actually on the soul level being part of other races or species, and they come in with these abilities, and then they have contact experiences, and they display this ability. You know.
Yeah, that links back to the ongoing generational thing with contact. So contact will often be down a particular bloodline, and you can usually trace it down one side of the family as well. So it may be sort of on the mother's side, so the grandmother will have contact, mother will have contact, daughter will have contact.
Yeah.
But the other people in that family may just be there kind of incidentally. They may sometimes be taken alongside the individual, but may not have direct interaction. They may just be present, or they may be aware that contact's going on, but not be directly part of it. So sometimes the beings have taken people and seemingly just kind of shut them down, so they'll be there, but they'll be in a trance-like state. Other times, they appear to kind of shut down the area. And this is one of the interesting angles of contact, is that it's some sort of time distortion that goes on when it takes place, and they seem to shut down other people in the area. So I've had numerous encounters reported to me where they've tried to sort of wake up their partner. So the partner's lying next to them in bed, they try to wake them up, and they're just out cold. You know, they're hitting them and they're not waking up at all. So they've been switched off essentially. To prevent them from observing or trying to stop what's taking place. Or is that just my interpretation of it? Again, I can't.
No, I've heard about this as well. Have you dealt with any cases directly where the people involved, contactees now or abductees, have memories of being part of the ET race that they are actually being involved with? So like coming in as a soul incarnating get my words out. A soul incarnating here for a purpose. That's why ETs are interacting with them, because they're actually part of that species.
Yes. There's been a number of cases I've involved with, which involved walk-ins. What's known as a walk-in. A walk-in is where the individual, for those who don't know watching, a walk-in is where the individual they suddenly see themselves as one of these alien species, usually one that they're directly interacting with. So they might look in the mirror and all of a sudden their face shifts to that of a grey for a brief moment. Sometimes that's observed by other people. There's a big case I investigated from Bicester. A lovely chap named David Hodrien spoke alongside with him at a number of conferences. Multidimensional show as an example, of course. Myself and David spoke at Multidimensional show twice, I believe. He had a number of walk-ins, reptilian walk-ins, where other people, including his 10-year-old daughter, observed his eyes change to reptile-like eyes, and sometimes his whole facial features would resemble that of a reptile. In one case, it led to one of his friends openly attacking him, and then never wanting to speak with him again because he was so terrified of what he'd seen.
Oh God!
When they finally found out of him, he said all he would say is he'd turned into a demon. His face was a demon. He was talking about seeing him turn into a reptilian. He didn't call it a reptilian because he didn't know what that was, but that's what he saw and described. And he said he didn't ever want to sort of speak with him again. So it actually broke up one of his friendships because of that. So when you're talking about stuff like that, it brings home the reality of this. We're not just dealing with just kind of fanciful, imaginary stuff here. We're talking about things observed by other indirect people that aren't experiencing the concept. So I believe that that's the beings that are interacting with them, kind of showing themselves through them for whatever reason. I don't know the reason for walk-ins. I just know that they happen from time to time. It's quite rare, but there are a number of cases I've dealt with where that's happened.
Well, that sounds like a subject we might have to get you back to talk about in some depth. We are going to have to wrap up in a minute, Dave, because we've been on it for, believe it or not, we've been here for an hour and a half. Hour and 43 actually. But I mean, I could sit here and talk until I run out of hard disk space. But
we definitely could. It's been fascinating.
It has. It's awesome.
And it feels like we've just touched the surface.
We have just scratched the surface here.
It's such a massive subject with so many different elements to it. To talk about it back to back, it's just hours and hours now. But happy to talk anytime with you guys about any aspects of the subject.
Yeah, great. Definitely have you back on at another time.
Yeah, wonderful. Maybe what we'll do when we publish this, we'll get a poll in place and let the viewers decide what they would like us to chat with you about next time.
That's an interesting one. Yeah, that's a very interesting idea.
Audience.
Yeah, put it out to the people watching the videos. Let them just say what we talk about. So,
yes.
Yeah, because we could talk about all of it forever, couldn't we? So.
Yeah. This is valuable for people that have had experiences as well.
Yes, it is.
To know that there's other people.
Yeah, I mean, on that, I would like to say, obviously I'm an active investigator in the subject, and I'm happy to speak with anybody, not just around the Birmingham area. I've dealt with cases as far wide as Australia, so anybody anywhere who's had experiences who wants to discuss them with me, whether or not it involves me writing up a case report. I like it when I can write a case report, because for me to know that information is interesting to me, but it doesn't achieve much else beyond that. Whereas if you put a case report out, other people can learn from those experiences, can see how they fit, and we sometimes even get other witnesses come forward off the back of that. So I've had cases where I put out a UFO sighting, and other people who've also seen it will come forward and say that they've come across the case report, and they're another witness that has happened, which is brilliant when I take place. So I'm more than happy to talk with anybody, but either on a direct investigative level or just ask questions. I can be reached. So my email address it's all available on the BUFOG website, www.bufog.com. We've also got an official Facebook organisation page, Birmingham UFO Group, and got a community Facebook page called BUFOG Truth Seekers. So if anybody wants to join that, we post videos, photos, and just hold chats between our meetings on there, and that's free for anybody to join again. And I welcome the conversation.
Yeah. What you do is great. We know, because we interviewed somebody who's come to you, Tina Bird.
Yes.
And so what you do is beneficial as well on an individual level, because she said that she bottled this stuff up for most of her life. And she wasn't aware there was anyone out there that she could talk to about it. So I think it's worth saying that to people out there that if they've had experiences and they don't know where to turn, well, hopefully now they do. You've got good work, Dave. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much for your time tonight, David.
No problem at all. Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. See you soon.
All the best to you, please.
Yes. Thank you, Dave.